Hello and welcome back. Before we get started today, I would like to kindly ask you all to please subscribe to this channel by clicking on the red subscribe button below. It won't cost you anything and it will go a long way to help me keep on delivering high-quality Sudoku tutorials for you absolutely free. And I would also like to encourage you to visit my website for lots of information about my tutorials, several Sudoku essays that you may find interesting, and much more. And when you have time, please visit the Sudoku Swami gift shop where you can buy beautiful custom t-shirts and coffee mugs featuring my logo and some other humorous and catchy Sudoku phrases. And you can also purchase some of the classical piano pieces that are featured in these videos recorded by me in their entirety just for you. You can find links to my website and to the gift shop in the description box below. All right, here we go. In the last video, we took a closer look at a discontinuous loop type 1, and we learned that even though it is a valid strategy on its own, it is generally more advantageous to perceive them as simply being AICs type 1, which will usually be more efficient and can sometimes prove to be even more productive. Today, we're going to focus on a DL type 2. As you may recall from tutorial number 41, the cell of discontinuity in a discontinuous loop type 2 is going to have two strong links connected to the same candidate in an otherwise perfect loop. We are going to prove that the candidate with two strong links attached to it will turn out to be true and can therefore actually be entered into the cell of discontinuity as the cell's solution. This is by far the best kind of DL that you can find, and it is a strategy that is totally unique, and I haven't found any alternative or better ways to look at it. We're going to look at several examples, and we will also go through the interesting logic of how and why this configuration works the way it does. But quickly, before we begin, I'm going to repeat an important segment from the last video that itemizes a few handy reminders. I will sometimes abbreviate discontinuous loop as DL and the propagation rules as the prop rules. In order to use any of the three DL techniques, you must be able to see all possible candidates for every cell in the whole puzzle. There can only be one cell of discontinuity, i.e. one cell where the prop rules are broken or where you find a contradiction, and the loop must otherwise be perfect, alternating strong, weak, etc. Okay? Now, I hope you have all watched the previous two videos, number 41 and number 42, because the logic of a DL type 2 is exactly the reverse of the logic in a DL type 1. Instead of the prop rules being broken with two weak links connected to the same candidate in the cell of discontinuity, a DL type 2 is going to have two strong links connected to the same candidate in an otherwise perfect loop. Now here in this diagram, let's take a look at this candidate 6 up here in row 1, column 4. Now we've got a strong link over to this 6 in block 2, and we've got another strong link coming down column 4 to this 6. And then from this 6 down here in row 7, we can make a weak link to this 6 and a strong link to this 1 because that's a bi-value cell. And up here in block 2, we can make a weak link to this 8 from that 6, and there's not enough room to draw it, so you're just going to have to imagine it. And then we can make a strong link to this 8 because there are only two 8s in that block. Okay? So down here, we've got strong, weak, strong, and up here we've got strong, weak, strong. So we possibly have the makings of a DL type 2. All we have to do now is connect this 8 with this 1, and we'll have it. Notice that we have a little mini chain between these two 8s and between these two 1s. Okay? Now those two 8s in row 2 are a conjugate pair, so there's a strong link between them, and the two 1s in column 7 are also a conjugate pair, and there's a strong link between them. But you should all know by now that a strong link can provide a weak inference. And it is the inference that really matters. Remember, this is an alternate inference chain. And when we use a strong link as a weak link, I like to call that a surrogate weak link Because it is acting as a weak link in our chain. As long as you can say if A is true, then B is false, you can use it as a weak link. So we can make a surrogate weak link between these two 8s, and we can make another surrogate weak link between these two 1s. And then we have a strong link between the 1 and the 8 up here in row 2, column 7, and so there is our chain. That is a DL type 2. R1C4 is our cell of discontinuity because the propagation rules are broken in that cell. Okay, now let's redraw this thing with all the arrows going in the same direction. And there it is, a DL type 2 with 2 strong links connected to this first candidate 6 in an otherwise perfect loop. This is what a DL type 2 looks like. So let's examine the logic of what's going on here. Let's follow the inferences of our chain, starting by assuming this 6 is false and see what it tells us, okay? And just like we did in the last video, instead of talking about links, let's talk about the inferences here. Remember, the inference is the most important thing. A link is just an imagined or physical depiction of the inference. So if we start by assuming that this 6 is false, we must start with a strong inference. A strong inference says if A is false, then B is true. So if this 6 up here is false, this 6 down here in row 7, column 4 must be true. And now the next inference must begin with this 6 being true because that was the conclusion of the first inference. So if this 6 is true, this 6 is false. If this 6 is false, this 1 is true. If this 1 is true, this 1 is false. If this 1 is false, this 8 is true. And if this 8 is true, this 8 would be false. And if this 8 is false, this 8 would be true. And if this 8 is true, this 6 is false. And so if this 6 is false, that would make this 6 true. So we started out by assuming that this candidate was false, right? But now the chain of inferences is leading us to the conclusion that it is true. And of course, this is clearly a contradiction. It is essentially saying that if this 6 is false, then this 6 is true, which doesn't make any sense. It is a contradiction. And as we know, when a conditional statement leads to a contradiction, the premise must be false. And this means that our original premise of the 6 in row 1, column 4 being false must be wrong, and therefore it must be true. It is a double negative resulting in a positive. Does everybody get that? This is how a typical DL type 2 works. So we can enter that 6 into that cell as the solution to that cell. Is that great or what? A DL type 2 is definitely one of my favorite solving techniques, because instead of making 1 or 2 candidate eliminations, we actually get to solve a cell. And you should all know by now that we could draw this same loop with the inferences going in the opposite direction, i.e. starting on this same 6 up here in row 1, column 4, but making the first link down to this 6 in row 3, column 6. The inferred true-false values for all the candidates in the loop would switch, but the end result would be exactly the same because we will still have 2 strong links connected to that first candidate, which means it must be true and can be placed in that cell as the cell's value because of the same logical proof. We can also prove this by way of what are called forcing chains. Forcing chains work 2 different ways. One, if multiple chains lead to the same conclusion, and if you are absolutely certain that at least one of the premises of those chains has to be true, then the conclusion must be true. This is called a verity. And 2, if multiple chains emanating from the same premise lead to conflicting, impossible, or contradictory conclusions, then the premise must be false. A DL type 2 can be proven using either kind of forcing chains, but let's take a look at rule number 2 first. All right, what we're going to do here is we're going to make 2 different chains starting with the same premise, and that premise is going to be that our 6 over here in row 1, column 4 is false. Okay? And And we're going to connect this 6 to this 1 over here. And we're going to use the routing from our discontinuous loop. But first, we're going to go in one direction, and then we're going to go in the opposite direction and see what happens when we compare the two chains, okay? So here's the first chain. So if this 6 is false, this one has to be true, then this 6 would be false, this 1 would be true, and this one up here would be false, right? Now here's the other chain. Starting with the same premise that this 6 is false, that would make this 6 true, this 8 false, this 8 true, this 8 false, and this 1 is true this time. First chain, second chain. So we have multiple chains emanating from the same premise, leading to contradictory conclusions. So according to rule number 2 of forcing chains, our premise must be false, which tells us that the first 6 cannot be false and must therefore be true. All right, so now for rule number 1, we're going to use those same exact 2 chains, but this time we're going to start on the 1 and we're going to end on the 6, okay? We're going to go in the opposite direction. And we know that the 1 must be either true or false, right? That's all it can be. It can't be in between. Ha ha. It must be either true or false. First, we're going to assume that it is true. So we're going to start on a weak link. Now don't get confused. This is not a formal AIC Type 1 or 2. This is just a chain of inferences. So it is totally legitimate to start on a weak link or a weak inference. We're just looking at the implications. So if this one is true, this one down here must be false. This is actually a surrogate weak link. And if this one is false, this 6 is true. And if this 6 is true, this 6 is false. And if this 6 is false, then our favorite 6 up here in row 1, column 4 would have to be true, right? Now let's examine the other possibility for the 1. Let's assume it is false. So if this one is false, this 8 would have to be true because that's a bi-value cell and that's a strong link. So if this 8 is true, this 8 would be false, this 8 would be true, this 6 would be false, and if this 6 were false, then our favorite 6 up here in row 1, column 4 would have to be true again. Even though we don't know for sure yet whether the 1 in row 2, column 7 is true or false, we do know that it has to be one or the other, right? So we can be sure that one of our premises has to be correct. And since both cases lead to the same conclusion, we can be sure that the 6 in row 1, column 4 is true. It is a verity. So either by using the DL type 2 or by using forcing chains, we know with absolute certainty that this 6 must be true and can be entered into that cell as that cell's solution. On a side note, I plan to cover forcing chains in my advanced series, which will begin sometime after this complete course is finished. Another interesting way to look at this is to use your imagination and think of it as an AIC Type 1, but with the 2 endpoints landing on the same candidate. An AIC Type 1 starts and ends with a strong link, and it starts and ends with the same digit candidate, and it has an odd number of links, right? And once it is constructed, we know that at least one of those endpoints must be true, and it is even possible that both endpoints are true, as I have demonstrated many times in previous videos. So if you kind of take this thing apart here in the cell of discontinuity, and imagine that this 1, 6 is magically divided into 2 separate 6s with strong links attached to them, then we would know that one of them must be true. But actually, in this case, they would both be true. You can maybe think of it as Siamese twins that can be separated. Ha ha. But really, when you are solving puzzles, you don't need to think about any of these additional things. All you need to do is to be able to recognize that you've got 2 strong links connected to this candidate 6, in an otherwise perfect loop, and you will know that it has to be true and that you can enter it as the solution to that cell. Got it? Okay, let's take a look at some other examples. Now, one of the questions I get asked the most is how to find chains. People say they understand the logic, but they can't seem to find a series of links that all hook up just right. So here's a tip. Look for mini chains. You know, chains of 3, 4, or 5 links, etc. Find as many of those as you can, and then see which ones might possibly connect and work together to form some type of useful chain. Like here in this diagram, let's go through all the candidates in order. Now the 1s have all been placed, so let's start with the 2s. Now we've got a weak link here in column 6, and then a strong link over to this 2, and a weak link to this 2. Now remember, I always use a blue arrow for a strong link and a green arrow for a weak link or a surrogate weak link, and all these chains can go in either direction. All right, so this is what I mean by a mini chain. So now let's go to the 3s. So let's light up the 3s, and we've got weak, strong, weak, strong, weak, strong, weak. Now remember, it doesn't matter whether these mini chains start with a strong link or a weak link or end with a strong link or a weak link, because we're going to be connecting them together later on after we find them. Okay, let's move to the 4s. Now remember that in a discontinuous loop, there is always going to be exactly one spot in the chain at the cell of discontinuity where you will either have 2 strong links in a row, as in a DL type 2 that we are studying in this video, or you will have 2 weak links in a row, as in a DL type 1 or type 3. All right, let's light up the 4s. And we could start anywhere really, but let's start on this 4 right here, and let's make a weak link over to this 4. Now that's a strong link, but we're going to use it as a weak link. Then this is strong, weak, strong, weak, strong, and now this could be a weak or a strong link. So let's call it a strong link. So now we've got 2 strong links coming off of this 4 here in row 8, column 1, and I'm pointing that out because we're going to use it later. And by being able to use a strong link as either a strong link or a weak link in the chain gives you a lot of extra options. Okay, let's move on to the 5s. So let's light up the 5s, and let's start down here with a weak link. We're going to go weak, strong, weak, strong, and now that looks like that's the end of the line, but this is a bi-value cell, so you can always make a link within a bi-value cell. Whenever you come to a bi-value cell, you can always use the link inside that cell as a strong link or a weak link as needed to keep the links alternating strong, weak, strong, weak. So we just made a strong link to this 5, so now we can make a weak link to this 2 and keep going. So let's light up the 2s. Now we can make a strong link to this 2, and then we can make a weak link to this 3 inside that bi-value cell, or we can make another weak link over to this 2 here. And that's one way to link 2 mini chains together. You get the idea. All right, now before we go to the 6s, I want to take a quick look at the 7s. All right, here on the 7s, we have a 2-string kite, or a turbofish, or however you want to think of it. It is a 3-link AIC. Strong, weak, strong, right? Now this configuration, in all its variations, is going to be one of the most common and useful mini chains that will help you construct longer AICs and loops. So be sure to keep your eye out for them at all times. Okay, let's go to the 6s and finish up this example. So here are the 6s, and we've got strong, weak, strong, and there's a whole bunch of other links we could make, but remember that we had a mini chain on these 4s, and look, they line up right with these 6s. Remember, we had strong, weak, strong, strong. So now let's draw those 2 chains. So there's the chain on the 6s, and now here's the chain on the 4s, right? And so if we make a weak link between this 6 and this 4, and another weak link between this 4 and this 6, we've got a discontinuous loop type 2 with 2 strong links coming off of this 4. Okay, so we know that 4 has to be true, right? We've got strong, weak, strong, weak, strong, weak, strong, weak, strong, strong. So we know that this 2 and this 5 are false and that we can enter the 4 as the solution to that cell. Just like that. Got it? All right, let's go to the next one. All right, now that you understand how to put these together, we're just going to cut to the chase each time, okay? So here in this diagram, let's light up the 8s. And we've got a turbo fish on the 8s, right? We've got strong, weak, strong. And now let's look at the 3s. On the 3s, we've got a 4-link mini chain that goes strong, weak, strong, strong. And now we're going to start coloring this candidate that's in the cell of discontinuity a different color. That way we won't have 2 yellows in a row. Let's color it this color, whatever that is. Beige or green or whatever, I don't even know. All right, so now with those 2 candidates, 8s and 3s, we've got 2 mini chains that can hook up and form a DL type 2. So here's that turbo fish on the 8s, strong, weak, strong. And then our mini chain on the 3s, strong, weak, strong, strong. So we've got 2 strong links attached to this 3, and that's our cell of discontinuity. So we know that that 3 must be true, and we can enter it just like that. Okay? All right, let's go to the next one. All right, here in this diagram, let's first take a look at the 5s. And we've got a mini chain here of strong, weak, strong. And now let's look at the 7s. We've got strong, strong, weak, strong. And we said we're going to color this candidate in the cell of discontinuity another color. So let's color that. So now here's the mini chain on the 5s. Okay? And here's the mini chain on the 7s. Okay? And then we can make a weak link between this 7 and this 5, and another weak link between this 7 and this 5, and that completes our DL type 2. And notice that this chain is made up of only 2 candidates, 7 and 5, just 2 mini chains of each one, and we've got our DL type 2. And in the previous example, it was just 8s and 3s, and the one before that, it was just 6s and 4s. So you'll find that a lot of times you only need 2 or 3 candidates to make these chains. But of course, there's no limit to how many candidates you can use, but just know that it's possible to make them with 2 or 3 candidates. So here's our cell of discontinuity, and we know that that 7 must be true because it has 2 strong links attached to it in an otherwise perfect loop. Okay? All right, next. Now this one's a little more complicated than the previous ones, but really it's a piece of cake. Let's first take a look at the 5s. So we've got a strong link from this 5 to this 5, and then we've got a weak link from this 5 over to this 5. Now because this is a bi-value cell, we can make a strong link to this 8, and now let's take a look at the 8s. Now we've got a weak link down to this 8 and a strong link to this 8. Okay? And now we can make a weak link to this 6, and now let's take a look at the 6s. And now we can make a strong link to this 6, a weak link to this 6, and a strong link to this 6. And now notice that if we take a look at the 9s, we can connect the 5 and the 6, this first 5 up here in row 1, column 9, and this 6 in row 5, column 7, with these 3 9s. So we can make a DL type 2 by using this as our cell of discontinuity, and we can make a strong link from this 9 to this 9, and then a weak link to the 5, and from this 6 we can make a weak link to the 9 and make a strong link up to this 9. So let's look at those chains one at a time. So here's the chain on the 5s. Okay? Now here's the mini chain on the 8s. And then here's the mini chain on the 6s. Right? And then we put it all together with the 2 strong links coming off our 9 in row 1, column 7. So there's our discontinuous loop, and we've got strong, weak, strong, weak, strong, weak, strong, weak, strong, weak, strong, weak, strong, and then we have 2 strong links coming off of this 9. So that 9 is going to be true, and we can enter it into that cell. Just like that. All right, let's go to the next one. All right, here in this one, we're going to use 4 candidates again, just like we did in the last time, but this one's going to be a little simpler because each mini chain is only going to have 2 links. So let's first look at the 8s. So we've got a strong link here, and then we've got a surrogate weak link here, and then we can make a strong link to the 2 in this by value cell. Okay, so let's do that and light up the 2s. And now we can make a weak link to this 2 and a strong link to this 3 in that by value cell. So now let's light up the 3s. And now we can make a weak link down to this 3 and a strong link to this 3. And notice that if we look at the 4s, we can link this 3 in row 9, column 2 with the 8 in row 7, column 8. This will be our cell of discontinuity, and we can make a strong link between this 4 and this 4, and we can make another strong link between this 4 and this 4, and that ties up our chain. So let's look at those links one at a time like we did before. Here's the chain on the 8s, and here's the chain on the 2, and now there's a strong link going to that 3, but we can't draw it because there's not enough room. And now let's look at the 3s. Okay? So now we make a strong link between this 8 and this 2. Okay? And we make a weak link between this 3 and this 4. And we make a strong link from this 4 over to this 4, and a weak link to the 8. And from this 4 up to our green 4, or beige, whatever color you want to call that, we make another strong link, and we've got 2 strong links attached to that 4 in row 7, column 2. So that's our cell of discontinuity, and we know that 4 is true and can be entered into that cell. Got it? All right, let's move to the next one. All right, this time we're only going to use 3 candidates to make our DL type 2, and let's start with the 6s. So we've got a strong link from this 6 to this 6, a weak link up to this 6, and a strong link to this 6. Now we can make a weak link to this 3, so let's light up the 3s, a strong link over here, weak down to this 3, and then we can make a strong link to this 5. Now let's light up the 5s. Now we can make a weak link to this 5, a strong link to this 5, and another strong link to this 5, and we can connect the 5 to the 6, and we're done. So let's use our mystery color to color our cell of discontinuity. So there's our candidate that's going to be proven to be true, and let's draw the links. So there's our chain. Here is our cell of discontinuity. So we've got strong and then weak to the 6, strong, weak to the 3, strong, weak to the 3, strong to the 5, weak to the 5, and strong back to our original 5. So we know that 5 is the solution to that cell. But look what's happening. We've got 4 candidates, 1, 2, 4, and 9. They're all going to be false. And then we're going to eliminate this 5 and this 5, of course, because they can't be true once we enter this 5. So we're going to eliminate 4 candidates and solve 1 cell. And we're also going to solve this X-wing on 5. And there it is. All right, let's do one more and then we'll wrap it up. All right, this last one is a little bit complicated. It has 19 links and uses 6 different candidates, but I'm putting it in here to demonstrate something. Let's take a look at the 5s. Notice that in this middle horizontal chute, we have a swordfish pattern on the 5s. 3 rows and 3 columns, okay? But there are no eliminations to be made, so that's really a dead swordfish. But we can use this to make an AIC. So let's start on this 5 right here and make a weak link to this 5, strong to this 5, and then another strong link here, weak, and then strong. So now, if we can connect these 2 5s, we're going to have a DL type 2 with this 5 here in row 6, column 5 as our cell of discontinuity. So let's see what we can do. So here we are. We've just made a strong link to this 5. Let's make a weak link to this 2. And then let's light up the 2s. So now we can make a strong link to this 2 and a weak link to this 2. And then we can make a strong link to the 9. So now let's light up the 9s. We can make a weak link over to this 9, and that's a surrogate weak link because that's a strong link that we're using as a weak link. Then strong to the 8 in the by value cell. So now let's light up the 8s. We can make a weak link down to this 8. That's another surrogate weak link. Strong to this 8, weak to the 4. Let's light up the 4s. And we have a strong link over to this 4. And we have a weak link to this 4, strong to this 6, and then weak to this 6 up here, and we've got it. So let's draw that chain. All right, so starting on this 5 in row 6, column 5, we've got strong, weak, strong, weak. And then we got strong to the 2, weak to this 2, strong to the 9, a surrogate weak link to this 9, a strong link to the 8 in the by value cell, a weak link down to this 8, that's also a surrogate weak link. Then we have a strong link in this block to this 8, a weak link to the 4, strong to this 4 over here, weak to this 4, I guess that's a surrogate weak link in that block, strong to the 6, weak back to this 6, strong to the 5 in that by value cell, and then a weak link to this 5 and a strong link back to our original 5 in our cell of discontinuity. So by using that swordfish as our starting point, we were able to make quite an elaborate chain. So now we can enter that 5 as the solution to that cell. And that's how you do it. Okay, that's going to do it for today. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video or found it helpful, please click the thumbs up icon and the red subscribe button, and be sure to click the little bell icon if you would like to be notified of new video uploads. In the next video, tutorial number 44, we will take a closer look at a DL Type 3, where we will have one weak link and one strong link interacting with the cell of discontinuity. We will prove that in this situation, the weakly linked candidate will turn out to be false and can therefore be eliminated. But I will also show you 2 other ways to envision a Type 3, and then after that, it will just be a matter of taste how you personally choose to handle them. So I hope to see you back here for that very interesting and important lesson. Until then, be well and be happy.